So we're at Unit 3, Lecture 5, and now we're into perception. The first four, we're talking about sensation, and we were talking about the different senses that we have. And now we're going to talk about perception and how perception, let me get myself up here, and how perception is a little bit different than sensation. We're going to kind of take a look at, that's good. We're going to take a look at the difference says between sensation and perception. And remember, sensation is just basically all this bottom up stuff. We all kind of sense things the same way. Again, and that's assuming that we all had the same vision. We all had the same level of color blindness. We all had the same level of sensitivity. We all had the same levels of neurotransmitters, etc. But for the most part, we're all taking information in the same. That is sensation. Perception is once that information comes in, what do we do with it? And again, we're not all going to perceive things the same way because it's based on experiences. So again, sensation is our sensory organs taking in this information and everything else. Then perception is this idea of matching it to what I've already seen, what I already know. Do I like it? Do I not like it? All these other things. You know, you take the idea of tasting sushi. You know, anybody who puts sushi in their mouth, they're pretty much getting the same sensation, the same taste and everything else, except some of us like sushi, you know, weirdos, and some of us do not, yours truly. Now, again, we're taking the same thing in, but based on experiences, based on prejudgments and all these other things, are going to decide whether or not we enjoy sushi or we don't enjoy sushi. And that's all based on perception. This a very kind of viral thing about, I want to say it was 7, 8 years ago. When people took a look at this dress, you see this dress as a white and gold dress. You see it as a blue and black dress. And again, it's all based on perception and what you want to see in lighting and everything else. And it goes back to that thing that we talked about before with color constancy. What is the expectation? Do I see the light source coming from over here? Or do I see it from coming over here? And how am I comparing these things? And what is my focus and what not? And remember, as we talked about before, is if you take away this little part right here, close one eye, put your finger up there, and suddenly it changes the shades of gray. So the way that we see this is largely based on who we are. Now, most people see this as a white and gold dress. I see it as a blue and black dress. And here's kind of the difference between the two. Some people see it a little bit more like that. Other people see it a little bit more like that. So again, a lot of it has to do with what you're coming in with, what your expectation is, and what your colors you're more sensitive to. All of these other things impact perception. So perception is the way that our brain takes in this information, organizes it in a way that makes sense. And a lot of it is based on previous experiences, cultural norms, expectation, the mood we're in, a lot of different things. You know, if you're in love, you see things as a lot more positive than if someone just broke up with you. You see things as a lot more negative. It's the same sensations coming in, but you're perceiving it differently. You're in love and you see someone else in love and you're like, oh, look at them. They're in love and it's so happy. And then they've got what I've got. It's so amazing. It's love amazing. So if somebody just dumped you and you see a couple holding hands, the exact same sensation is like, yeah, well, and so he finds out she's cheating on him, you know, and you that's how you perceive it because of where your mind is at that particular time. Okay, so think of sensation like a pile of Legos, and someone just goes, here's a bunch of Legos. Do what you will with it. That's the sensation. That's your brain taking in these 2 billion bits of information, sending it to all different parts of your brain and deciding, okay, here's what we got. What do we do with it? Perception is you take these Legos and you put them together and you make this. All right. And I use this example because I actually got that Batmobile. I'm a child. But that's the idea of you. But you could put those Legos together and make something else that's not a Batmobile. Not everyone's going to make a Batmobile. Not everybody's going to come up with that. So again, once you give somebody a pile of Legos, one person may make one thing with it, somebody else makes something else with it. You know, you speak Italian to me. I don't understand any of it, but someone next to me who speaks Italian is hearing a story and emotion and all these other things. I'm just hearing, you know, I'd say, I don't even know Italian. All right. So not everyone's going to create the same result. So a lot of things that we experience, and a lot of things, everything we experience is based on how we perceive it. Seeing is believing, but also our beliefs impact how we see things. You know, the fact that when a bunch of people stormed the Capitol on January the 6th of 2021, some people looked at that and go, oh my God, it's a crime. American democracy is falling apart. And some people are going, those are patriots. And it's all about perception and what your attitude is. And some people are just like, whatever, what's on Netflix? It's all about your perception. Okay. Gestalt took this idea of organizing things and putting them into a whole. We talked about this back when we talked about the history of psychology, and not everyone's going to take everything in. I think I use this example of my name. This is my signature, Jason Porter. And if I told you that this is Jason Porter, you could go, yeah, okay, maybe I could see that. Yeah, there's a big J and there's kind of an S and a P R T R. Okay, yeah, but the individual parts don't make sense. So a lot of times when we're looking at things, when we're reading things, you know, when you're looking at the word, you know, information, you're not looking at it and going, okay, that's an I with a dot, that's an info, information, tion, is that mation, information? No, it's information. That's what it is, because you've seen the word information thousands of times in your life. Now, again, a kid in the first grade is going to stumble over that word because they haven't made that connection as many times. So their perception of the word information is different than your perception of the word information. But after you've seen it again and again and again, you've made that neural connection again and again and again, you don't need every detail of information in order to see information. If you take a look at this right here, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and the last letter are at the right place. Every word there is misspelled, except the 3-letter and 2-letter words. They're all misspelled. As long as you got the first letter there and the last letter there, the letters in the middle can be a mess. This is why I, as a psychology teacher, when grading essays, I don't really notice misspellings because I'm not looking for them, because I'm looking for the holistic thing. Yet if I'm an English teacher, I see nothing but misspellings because that's what I'm sensitive to. That's what I'm looking for. The rest can be a total mess and you can still read it without problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. And that's what Gestalt is, taking things as a whole, not little tiny things. And this is why a lot of times we miss those little things. Someone got a haircut, you know, someone got their braces off, someone got whatever. A lot of times we miss those little changes because we're not looking for those little changes, and we look at things as a whole and not little details, especially people we're not that close to. Take a look at this right here. We see a poster of Star Wars, a very iconic thing with Darth Vader, Luke, Han, Leia, and all the gang going on. But when you blow this up and get a little bit closer, blow it up and get a little bit closer, you start to realize, wait, this is scenes from the movie. There's a little stormtrooper there. There's a little 3PO right there. There's a little desert scene over here. And this all looks very, very, very much like little scenes from the film, but you don't see these scenes when you blow it up here because we don't notice the detail and it can look like a big Wookiee. This is the exact same thing as this right here. And we start to notice those little details when it's closer, but not when it's further away. When it's further away, we go, okay, the details aren't important because suddenly it's shadow and all these other things that we're taking a look at. Another mosaic right there. So again, what's very important is what is called visual capture. Visual capture, again, shows the dominance of our vision. And we've talked about this before. Our vision is the most dominant of our senses, assuming that you have it. Okay, and this sense influences everything else in the somatosensory system, and it perceives our environments. When we see actors on television and we're thinking sound is from their voice, it's not coming from a speaker here and a speaker there, it's coming from their voice on the screen. You see a ventriloquist, and you know, the guy behind me right here, and the reason it looks like he's throwing his voice over there is because we assume the voice is coming out of the puppet, even though we know it's coming out of the man. You know, flight simulators, when you go over something like this right here, this gives you the sense that you're going up and over the top. And then if I added on top of that, your body going forward, it makes it feel like you're going down. Uh, saw a video if you were in class of an actor saying Bob versus Guy, changing the lips on there. If we see Bob, but we hear Guy, it doesn't make sense to us. How a food looks can impact the way that it tastes. You should have seen a video in class. If not, there's one connected by this of the rubber hand illusion, where you have somebody put a fake hand right there, and then you rub their hand over here while rubbing the fake hand. They think this is their real hand, and you hit it with a hammer, and they feel pain. Kind of a cruel trick to play. This wonderful, beautiful, delicious tasting brownie. But if I took this same brownie mix and made them like that, suddenly disgusting. Suddenly we have a little bit of a gag reflex because we shouldn't be eating poop. Don't want to eat poop, shouldn't be eating poop, and our body rejects it, even though this is the same brownie as those brownies over there. All right. So again, perception is all about organizing. This is what is called figure versus ground. When we take a look at a two-dimensional object and we go, how does this fit into my three-dimensional world? We have to go, what is the figure and what is the ground? For example, right here, if I say that the background is white and the figures are black, I've got two silhouettes looking at each other. But if I say the background is black and the what's in the foreground is white, I suddenly have this vase candlestick holder. If I say the background here is white, I've got the tail of a dog running away. If I say that the foreground is white and the background is black, suddenly I have the profile of a lion. If I say that the background is yellow, I have a silhouette of Batman looking that way. But if I say that the background is black and I turn it upside down, we suddenly got an upside down penguin. We take a look over here, and as long as we say that the background is white, it's Batman overlooking a burning Gotham. If I say that the background is in fact black and I turn my head to the side, I see it's the Joker looking straight down. So again, usually we think that things that are in more detail are closer to us, things fuzzier are further away, which gives me the perception that this is up close, and then it jumps down into here, and that this is in the background because it's a little bit more blurry. So figure ground is just basically making the decision of what comes forward and what goes back when I'm looking at a two-dimensional object, fitting it into my three-dimensional world. I take a look at something like this and I don't like this. And the reason I don't like this is because my figure is a cross. Now, is the cross white or is the cross black? If it's a white cross with a black background, that's great. But then suddenly my white cross is becoming the background, and it's just really sort of a headache going on here. And it keeps changing back and forth. I don't really like things like this. Okay, again, when we're talking about figure ground here, do I see the background as this dark stuff? So I've got a wolf looking up there, a bunny looking there, and a kitty looking there. Or is the white the background and it's a mother and a father and their child, or a couple of kids looking at each other, or whatever? You've got to make a decision that is it one or is it the other? Is this half of a face looking at me, half of a face looking at me, or is it a profile going in that direction or in that direction? What's the figure? What's the ground? My brain has to make sense of this in my three-dimensional world. For example, first word that you see. What's the first word that you see right here? And of course, most of you see the word good because you think of the background as white. So it's the word good, but could it also be the word evil? Now, some idiots will take a look at this and go, well, you saw the word good, that means you're a good person. That tells you all about your personality. It tells you nothing about your personality. Nothing at all about your personality. All it is a figure ground test. It's the same thing as if somebody showed you this. What's the first thing that you see? And most people will go, it was this little devil demon that I see. Well, you didn't see the angels. That means you're a very devilish demon, evil person. No, it doesn't. It means that what we're attracted to first is what's in the middle, and then we work our way out. Had I shown you this figure like this, of course, you would have seen the angel first. So again, watch out when people give you these little figure ground tests and go, oh, this tells you everything. The first thing you saw told you this about your person. No, it doesn't. It really, really doesn't. So again, when we're talking about figure ground, we see the word ground and the word figure within there. It's kind of cute. A lot of times this is used in advertising, priming, and whatnot. You see this in these paintings right here. Do I go with the holistic thing of this being a face going that direction, a face coming at me, a face going in that direction? Or do we take the little details of a man and a woman, a guy in the field, and a man talking to a woman, and a poor dog here that's been hit? Or maybe he's just sleeping. He's resting, whatever. That you got to make a decision. Do I take it as a holistic gestalt thing, or do I take all the tiny little details of it. These are great examples of it in advertising. I'm sure some of them you're familiar with. You take a look at FedEx right here, and there's a little arrow right there, which might be priming you into the idea that FedEx delivers things to you. Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors. Tostitos, you got two guys with a tortilla chip and a bowl of salsa right there. Tour de France, I got a guy right here on a bicycle riding away. A Hershey's Kiss right between the K and the I's, a little piece of chocolate right there. Amazon has everything from A to Z, and it's going to give you a little bit of a smile at that point. Sports logos, the Milwaukee Brewers, the M for Milwaukee, the B for the Brewers, but put them together to make a baseball mitt. The Hartford Whalers, you've got the H right there, the W for Whalers, and a whale tail right there. Wendy's, food good enough for MOM, that mom would make. All of these are examples of Gestalt in action. We don't pick it up as a whole, but when we look at the little details, we do. Because what we want to do is we want to group things together, and we want to group things together in a way that makes sense. So we're constantly grouping things together. How do we take a look at this image over here? How does this make sense? And I see the twisting, and it just becomes a spiral going down and around and around and around and around and around and around. That's what I think it is. But because that makes sense, it follows a rule. We take a look at the background, we take a look at the foreground, it all makes sense. But what if I were to tell you that that is not a spiral going down? That these are in fact circles that do not connect. If I start here, come around, come around, come around, come around, come around, I'm right back to where I started from. And to give you a sense of it, let me put a circle right there. That's just one complete circle. But the sort of twisting of the rope, if you would, gives me the sense that it's going down and down and down and down. It's not. It's just a bunch of circles that are not connected with one another. And if we go outside of this yellow circle and we follow, and we're starting right at the top here, and we follow this around and we go around here and we come back up to the top, we're right where we started again. But it doesn't make sense because it doesn't go with the rules that we know. These are two perfectly geometric circles, even though it kind of looks like a twisted bracelet because it's not really in focus, but it's just a circle there and a circle there. But you take away those circles and they look all bendy, because we want to go with the shadows. We want to go with these little sort of blurry things right there that sometimes throws off our perception. We take a look at this. This is in focus. It must be closer. That's blurry. It must be further away, and they're connected, right? No, just a bunch of circles, just a bunch of circles. Then again, just a bunch of circles round and round and round and round and round right there. Okay? Take a look at that. Take a look at this one, just a bunch of circles. We take a look at this, and again, for a lot of you guys looking at this on your computer screen as your eyes are going around, it looks a little bit wavy. It's not wavy at all, but what happens there is all of these flat pieces look like they're like that because the white part we think is in light, then the dark part we think is in shadow, and as we go around, it looks like they're moving and moving and moving, but they're not moving at all. There's no movement going on here. Even though as our eyes go around, we kind of want to see movement. We want to see movement here. There is no movement going on. Ugh. There's no little sort of a twisting movement going on because we want to use what we know about light. There's no little subtle movement going on there. That's a still picture. This is a still picture. That is a still picture. Still picture, no vibration. Even though as our eyes go around, we sort of, it's not happening, not happening, not moving. Not moving, not vibrating, not happening. There's no movement in any of these pictures. Any movement that you see, and it, by the way, especially hits in your peripheral. As you look into the middle, your peripheral makes it move a little bit more because, again, your peripheral vision is not as accurate. Okay, so all of this is about grouping principles. The Gestalt has 5 grouping principles. The first one is proximity. If things are somewhat similar to one another and they're close by, we put them together. For example, we got 8 different circles here, but instead of looking at 8 individual circles, I just put them all together and I make a cube. Instead of looking at all these little individual things, it's a tree. I want to group things together and make figures because I can only pay attention to a few things at the same time. So if it's close to one another, proximity to one another, I put them together. If things are close enough to what they're supposed to be, I go ahead and say they're what they're supposed to be. I take a look at this. This is three people holding hands and a guy jumping right there. Even though I've never seen three people standing like this, I've never seen people whose legs go all the way up to their armpits. I've never seen a person whose head is 1/3 of their entire body. I've never seen anybody jumping out of the ground and the ground actually explodes and they do it in bow-legged curves. I've never seen that, but they're close enough to people. You know, 2 arms, 2 legs, head, close enough. So I go ahead and take that as a representation of people. Continuity. You see this little background here, but you assume that my office continues on that way and continues on this way. Well, not as much this way or that way, but it continues on that way. And you're right, even though you can't see it, if I go like this, it does continue into that room over there. So there is a continuation that sort of happens there. Even though you can't see it, you assume that it's still going. Um, you know, if you're in a room and there's a closed door, even though the door is closed, you assume there's a hallway out there, whatever, it continues on. Closure, we fill in the gaps when the gaps aren't filled in. We take a look at the panda right there, and even though it's the white background is going into the foreground, we just assume that we push one back and we pull the other forward. Connectedness, we assume that this is all on the same plane and these are three barbells. It's not lines that are closer and balls that are further away or vice versa. We go ahead and connect things in ways that it makes sense to connect. So Gestalt is to take things in as a whole. We take a look at this guy right here. We assume that this is a gentleman holding up a pen with his hand on a desk. We assume that this is not some random hand floating in the air. We take a look at impressionistic art. You look up close, it seems a bit of a mess. You get further back and you go, oh, it's a woman and she's got an itch on her ankle or whatever's going on there. And we put the pieces together. This Myers illusion right here, where A to B looks shorter, B to C looks longer because it's B to C is opened up. A to B is enclosed. And by the way, we'll talk about this next lecture or so. This is also dependent on the culture that you grow up in. Because if you grow up in, say, an urban culture with a lot of buildings and a lot of right angles that you're used to, this is a much more effective illusion. You grow up in a tribe in Africa living in huts, this illusion doesn't necessarily work as well on you because you're not exposed to as many right angles. We take a look at something like this. We don't like this because we come over here, we go, we got 1, 2, 3 ends, and we come over here, we go, wait, this is 2. How can this be 2, but this is 3? I don't like that because what happens is this is a solid, we assume this is solid, but then it becomes my background. We assume this is solid, but then it becomes my background. So again, little arty things like this throw us off because they don't make sense in a three-dimensional world. This guy does not make sense because we go, okay, you got a big elephant. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4 legs. No problem. He's got 1, 2, 3. How's he got 5 feet? You can't have 5 feet. Well, what happens here is the leg becomes the background. The foot becomes the background. The leg, background. Foot, background. You can't be both. You can't be both. So again, when we can't fit this two-dimensional object into our three-dimensional world, it does become a little bit frustrating to us. We see the column as the background, and then it goes into a column. You know, solid column right here, that's okay. Then here we got, you know, the column going into the background. We just don't like things like this. They throw us off. We take a look at these two pictures, very iconic. We got Albert Einstein right here. We got Marilyn Monroe right there. What if I were to tell you it was the same picture? Blow it up, blow it up, blow it up, blow it up, blow it up. There we go, same picture. But what happens is as we take it away, you lose all these lines and details, and then suddenly a mustache becomes a smile. The eyes are a little bit different. The hair is a little bit different. We see more details when she's further away. It's a little bit more blurry when it gets up and closer. This throws us off. We don't like that. So the Necker cube is this idea when you were a kid and you were making your little house, it's a box and a triangle on top and everything was in 2 dimensions. Fantastic. Then suddenly you hit a little elementary school and you start to realize, wait, I can draw a cube. And a cube is fantastic. But the problem with this cube is you've got to make a commitment. Which way does it go? When I make this cube right here, is this the front of the cube going back into the distance like this? Or is this the front of the cube and it's going down towards a horizon like this one here? It can be one or the other, but it can't be both simultaneously. You know, I can blink my eyes and go this to this to this to this, but it can't be the same at the same time. That's why we don't like something like this. All right. When we take a look at things like these, we don't like this because it doesn't make sense. You cannot be on stairs that are continuously going up. It doesn't make sense. When these things don't fit into our three-dimensional world, we look at it and it becomes very, very peculiar to us. When we take a look at something like this, which by the way is fascinating, we look at that and we go, wow, that's really amazing. But then we go, wait, that doesn't fit, because as this circle is going around, we go, okay, this is the background right here. And wait, how did that get inside the circle? Okay, this is the top of the figure right here. It's the top, it's the top. Wait, how did this come inside? We look at this and it's kind of fascinating. It's kind of neat, but it does, this sort of snake-like thing doesn't fit into my three-dimensional world. And since it doesn't fit into my three-dimensional world, we look at this and it gives us a bit of a headache because we can't put it in there. All right, when we take a look at something like this, is this a bunny rabbit or is this a duck? Well, if you look at it that way, it's a bunny rabbit. That way, it's a bunny rabbit. That way, it's a duck. That way, it's a duck. It could be one or the other, but it can't be both simultaneously. So when I take a look at something like this, well, that's weird. Is that sort of a crow up that way and that's an eye of a crow, or is this the head of a bunny right here and that's the eye of a bunny that way and those are ears? Of course, it's a crow, but could be a bunny. Which one is it? You know, when I take a look at, you know, this guy right here, is that a bird looking up or is that a goat turning to the side? You know, that's a really sort of weird thing that's going on there. Kind of a goat, or it's just weird. It's just all sorts of weird that we're looking at. We could be one or the other, can't be both at the same time. There's a very, very famous one right here. Is this a young woman looking up into the distance, or is this an old lady looking down? Big nose, chin, mouth, eye, down that way. Young woman, eye, nose, cheek, off in that direction where this is her ear. It's one or the other, but it can't be both. Other examples of it right there. We take a look at this. Is this two Batmen looking at each other? Is it one big bad Wolverine looking right at you? We take a look at this. Are they scared because they see a skull, or are they scared because they see Santa Claus with a big bag? You know, this guy with a hat on his head, or is it this guy with a hat on his head? And we flip it upside down. Is this a man or woman inside the mask? Well, we got two eyes, we got a nose and a mouth, right? Or is it a man kissing a woman? There it is. We take a look at the number of ships right here. How many ships do we have? 1, 2, 5, 6, and the answer is 1. But what they used to do is back in World War II, they would paint ships like this so that they could get across an ocean a little bit better and a little bit easier. And, you know, thinking that was a bigger fleet and German U-boats wanted to attack it. And this was done very often. These sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Decoys. These decoys that were placed in the field so that the Nazis would fly over and go, oh, there's a tank there. It's a big balloon. But it looked like a tank. Why wouldn't it be a tank? Of course it would be a tank. We take a look at these people and they look like big risk takers. Like, oh my God, look at them. They're hanging off a cliff and right over, and they could fall and they could kill themselves. How dare they take such a risk? Well, it looks like that from this perspective. But if you look at it from this perspective, you see that it's only about 5 feet off the ground. But from this perspective, where they're sort of looking at it flat and taking this picture, you don't see all this ground. You just go right into the ocean or the Gulf or whatever that it's going into. So the angle has everything to do with it. And again, the perception of something being very risky, it's not really that risky. It's just all in the angle. Now, when it comes to depth perception is our ability to see objects in 3 dimensions. And the reason I can see objects in 3 dimensions is because I have a left eye and a right eye. My left and right eye see things slightly different. We talked about this a little bit before. You put your finger straight out, close your left eye, and switch and you close your eye, left, right, left, right. And what you will notice is it looks like your finger is going back and forth, but you're just taking 2 different pictures. So your left and right eyes take two slightly different pictures. So then when your brain gets that information and puts it together, because you have two-dimensional cameras, then your brain takes that information and decides, okay, what do we push further away and what do we pull closer to us? This gives us a sense of depth. We don't really have depth perception when we're babies. This is why babies will fall. You know, you put them on a couch, they'll crawl right off of it, fall down. They don't have a sense of depth perception. That's why this little baby right here will decide to walk across the glass to the lady, because he doesn't have a sense that this is very, very dangerous. Of course, he's got no concept of glass. This kid right here who's tapping on it, he's got a sense of depth perception. I shouldn't go across there because that is scary. That's a scary thing over there, and I would fall. So a kid doesn't get this until they're about 7, 8, 9 months of age, which, by the way, is about the same time kids are starting to stand up, you know, learn to walk a little bit and things like that. You can't learn to walk unless you have depth perception. So when you do things like this is what I refer to as binocular cues. Binocular means you have two eyes. You have a left eye, you've got a right eye. They're 2.5 inches apart, taking these two different pictures. And then the more disparity that there is, the closer that we feel that the object is. When I put my finger here, I go left, right, it moves more. I put it back there, left, right, doesn't move as much. Okay, so the more disparity there is, it must be closer to me, and then my brain sort of makes that. So the retinal disparity is the difference between the left eye and the right eye and the pictures that we're taking. Now, when I'm looking at this picture as a whole, my left eye is here, my right eye is here. But when I want to read one word, both of my eyes come together on that particular letter. I converge and bring them together. When I want to look at something in 3D, I do this. 2D, I want to come back together and put both of my eyes at the exact same moment. That is where I would use monocular cues, which we'll talk about in the next lecture. This gives us an example of something that is called a stereogram. A stereogram is when you take a look at this, and this, if you focus on this right here, this thing down there, is this is computer generated art. Now what happens is you need to focus your left eye over here and your right eye over here, because what we want to do is we want to bring both of our eyes together at points and look at this point and this point and this point, like this little horsey. There is the neck, and we want both of our eyes looking at the butt and looking at the feet and whatever. I don't want that. I want my left eye here and on my right eye here. If you've ever looked at your phone, as you're looking at your phone, your brain sort of goes to the Bahamas, and as you're looking at the screen, you can sort of see the screen suddenly go like that, like the part of the screen goes that way, part of the screen goes that way, because your eyes are relaxing. So your left eye is coming out and your right eye is coming out, and you kind of have two different pictures. You want to take a look at this image right here with your eye, again, let me put myself in the middle. What I want is I want one eye right here. I want one eye right there, because when I do this, let me try it real quick. There it is. What I have is a horse. The horse's head is up here. The neck is right here. The leg comes down to here, the leg comes down to there, the butt is kind of over here. This image right here appears up here. As long as my left eye is looking here and my right eye is looking here, I can take it in. Now, if I blink and I converge, I can't see it. I come back out, there it is. Now, again, you can pause on this, you can go to the PowerPoint, you can do this. If you want to Google stereograms, you got that as well. Converging the eyes, it doesn't work. Opening up the eyes and using your retinal disparity, it does in fact work. All right, so again, it's bringing these things apart. Those are using binocular cues. Convergence, we come together, we read words. I want to take in the whole picture, left eye over here, right eye over here. I want to read something, left and right eye come together at a particular point. That is convergence. And this again is how we see 3D. This is just two pictures that we see. This is what the left eye would see and what the right eye would see, and it's flipping back and forth. And you'll notice there's not much of a disparity with the little baby and the little walker thing right here. So we know this must be closer. But the difference between what my left eye sees and what my right eye sees, there's much more of a disparity. So we know to put that into the background. More disparity, further into the background that you go, as this alligator attacks a young child. A couple of pictures of Abraham Lincoln taken at two different angles, which represent what the left eye would see and what the right eye would see. When you flip them back and forth, it gives you this assumption that you're looking at President Lincoln in 3 dimensions. Kind of creepy right there. So that gets us through the first day of perception. And so the next lecture, we're going to start to take a look at what are called monocular cues. So we'll take a look at monocular cues starting tomorrow or whenever you look at it.